Next, the update video on the cab restoration. And at this point, the floor is all cut up and most of the floor is finished. So the floor is actually bolted down with these 1/2-inch stainless bolts. As you can see, the floor material I used for the floor is pretty thick. I think this is what it's more than 1/8, 3/16 maybe, but it's very thick. You can't bend it. It's solid. And these sheets were actually outside full of rust, and they weren't being used, so we used them. Fortunately, I didn't have enough to do the whole floor. I think these are kind of cool. These little crisscross a profile here. So the other one here is just flat, which is probably easier for cleaning. And again, it's already bolted down. Doghouse door is finished, and this whole thing will come off. Unfortunately, because of the way the floor is made and the dash, I wasn't able to weld this directly here, or maybe I should have, but I wanted to have a column or a square pipe right on the corner. It's just sometimes, like I've already said that, and sometimes there's just so many variables and it's hard to think of everything. So sometimes you just gotta go and figure things out as you go or after you do something. So I think it turned out pretty nice. And this angle here, this angled part actually goes into the around the doghouse door, and that way it covers up the gap between them, which is pretty cool. So everything's pretty much welded in. We might, at the end, if we have some more time, just fill all these welds in and just make the whole thing continuous. I've been debating, in the past that's what I used to do, but now like this is plenty strong. So in reality, what most people do is this: they wouldn't even go do these many sections. They just fill this in, these gaps here, with seam sealant or polyurethane, some type of silicone. But I kind of like to have the solid, fully welded, fully continuous welded. Because at Old Crow's Classic Cars, 100% is not enough. So this here still needs to be welded, but yeah, overall the floor is finished. I just have to do those 2 sheets there. I already have some of those coupling nuts. I guess I should call those things flooring nuts now with my adaptation, my revised engineering of them. So I got those floor nuts all welded in, but I welded them in the corner, which is in this case not a good place because it stays too close to the edge of the sheet. So you'll notice here that they're mostly far away from the edge. This one is kind of close to this edge here, but there's still quite a bit of space. But look at this. This is the ideal. This is what I really love here. I don't like it when they're very close to the edge like that. So there, I have to weld a few extra coupling nuts there, floor nuts. But I ran out, so I'll have to get some more. And here I don't have any of them yet. So my original idea was that I was going to have a square pipe going from here to there and have this piece separate from the doghouse door. But I ended up going with this L design here, just everything in one. Not too sure what we're gonna do here. If I'm gonna have another piece of section of a a sheet here, or if I'm gonna cut this off or make it go all the way to the top. I'm not sure yet. Inside here, there would have gone a large plastic pipe. The heater core was over here, and that plastic pipe would take the hot air from this side to there, which I think is unnecessary. Just takes up too much space. Just having the heater here is fine. I still might have a pipe going that way, but probably not. It's looking good. We welded the back here's been welded almost all the way. My helper did these welds here, so they're not the nicest looking, but like they're irregular, but they're good welds. They're good welds. And then what I did mostly yesterday is make the linkage for the clutch. So there used to be a piece of the linkage. This is what we call what's called a full floating style shaft. So there's a shaft inside, and there's an outer shaft, I guess, if you will, and it floats as well. But there's two hinges, if you will, on the ends, which means that this linkage here, it rotates, but the inner shaft can also rotate. But anyways, there was the shaft for this. So as you can see, there's a big bolt that goes through it. And the way it was originally was that there was just a big piece of shaft, outer shaft like that, right over here, where and it was part of it was welded onto that channel frame. And then on the other side, because it's so long, you need to have a support on both sides. On the other side, they just had a piece of sheet with the hole in it supporting that side. And obviously that got rotted out, and it was attached to the cab, to the sheet of the cab with screws. And obviously those got rotted out, so somebody had actually welded another piece of sheet over it. It was just a shit show. So basically what they had, which is a very bad design, is they had a huge piece on one side, and then on the other side they just had a piece of sheet right at the end. So I've changed that design because, well, first of all, the supports where it originally went, they're gone. They were all rotted out except for the frame part, and it's just not worth it, too much work removing that. So I started from scratch, and fortunately there was these pipes here. They already had almost the right size hole. I still had to take it to the lathe and just do I think one or two sizes bigger, just one or two drills, and then I had to cut the pipe, and now it's a good design because now I've got a big, and this is a really thick pipe there, just so you can see. So now I have a thick piece on one side and another thick piece on the other side. Now the tricky part was, how do I mount it to the cab? And after I show you the design that I came up with, I kind of feel stupid, or maybe, yeah, because I actually spent quite a few hours, well, maybe not a few hours, maybe 1 or 2 hours thinking about a design and trying to fit it, and looking around for what pieces of steel I had and different options, until I finally came up with this design, which is simple. I always try to work out a simple linkage, a simple design. Like Einstein said, make things as simple as possible. But it does take, at least for me, quite a bit of time thinking about a design. Sometimes people that look at me, they think I'm not working or I'm just resting, but I'm actually thinking. I can't really think about this stuff and work at the same time. And you got to keep trying to fit. But anyways, So the first thing I did was I got that piece, that round piece of steel. Again, it was just left over from some other job. I machined it with 2 holes of different sizes so that I could fit a bolt through it. And then I welded the bolt onto the other side. And then I welded the whole thing onto the frame of the cap. So that's another thing. I didn't want to go onto the sheet. I wanted to go into the frame. Now initially I thought I wouldn't be able to weld this because just look at where it's at. You're probably thinking, how on earth did I get that welded? And I actually got it welded all the way around. Won't be able, even be able to see it, to show it to you, but I did get it welded. I think you can kind of see it there. I did get it welded all the way around. Here, hang on. And guys, I am the king of welding. The king of MIG. Bragging aside, it wasn't very easy, but I got it done, and that's a stainless bolt right there. And then, now the thing is, this thing is long and you have to align it. So these two, this one with this one, they have to be aligned. If they're a little bit of an angle, a little bit off center, then the shaft, you won't be able to get the bolt through, and or even if it does go through, its movement is gonna be restricted. So it is tricky. It's not as simple as it may seem. So I came up with this design, and I made this. I welded this square piece of solid pipe onto this round pipe here. As you can see, I think it looks pretty nice. It'll look like a stock part, like a factory part. Some very heavy duty factory part for sure. That's like 12 millimeter there. 12 millimeter thick. So I welded the square pipe. I drilled a hole through it. And now this will go onto there. And the cool thing is that with it just being one hole, you have adjustment this way, so I can move this around that way, around the hole, so it can twist around like that, but it can also twist around this way. So it gives for a lot of adjustment, and if the height is incorrect, I can add washers behind it to get the right height. So it's a truly 100% adjustable system, which I always try to do because it's much easier. What some people would have done is just cut this piece of pipe and that pipe, and then just welded it onto the frame somewhere. But the thing is, I'll show you in a second. But this thing here, this pipe here, it's gonna hit here, this part of the frame here, whereas on the other side it's not. So there's a height difference. And again, some people would just try to weld it on. It is a very thick pipe, so it will not warp, but it would be difficult to get it welded on exactly the right spot. Again, because even though this pipe here is thick, the frame is much thinner, and depending on how much heat you put through it, it could warp. If you're careful, you could do it, but I kind of prefer this removable design. So if I just welded these two on, then I could not remove the whole thing very easily. Like, these things would stay on. I'd have to remove the whole bolt to remove this here, but with this design I can just remove the whole assembly like that. I don't even have to remove the shaft. And afterwards I will have grease fittings here. I will be drilling some grease fittings, holes for some grease fittings, and putting the grease fittings in, and then putting grease in. So here's what it looks like, what it will look like. That's what it looks like on the truck. So it looks like installed, which I think turned out to be just a beautiful design. So as you can see here, I can actually angle the whole thing quite a bit if I want to. This here's probably the straight spot where it's straight, like right there. But I could possibly have it there. You see that hinge just turning there? Zoom in so you can see. So even if it is a bit off, you can still adjust it now. I might just go ahead and weld this piece here, but I'll have to put a spacer here because I want it to be straight. So probably around there. But I might also just go ahead and do what I did on that side, which I think is pretty cool. So I also got these bigger mounts, which I'll show it to you guys later. And we're going to swap them out from those smaller mounts there.